Yep, we are now.
Brilliant. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session on lighter conservation standard. It's really good to have you join us today. We're going to concentrate mainly our time on showing you, sharing with you the product itself, hearing your feedback on that, having some conversation, thinking about how you might like to use this or share it with colleagues. But I do want to also give a little bit of background and introduction, just briefly, because this lighter conservation standards initiative has been around for a while, a few years really, but it didn't really move forward in a concerted way until we were able to allocate some proper resources to it. So we managed to do that from the board, from the CMP board, with the generous support from the Moore Foundation. And once we got to that point, we really have been able to move forward this initiative in a much more active way, with a really good amount of stakeholder engagement, coordinated and contracted through the Foundation of Success. Really doing a great job, I think, pulling things together and coming up with a product that I think we're really happy with, we really like. We hope you will like it too. We know there's more that can and will be done, and we'll hope to make some further progress, and Caroline and colleagues will take you through some of that. But I'm just going to hand over straight on to Caroline, actually, because we'd like to get more into actually sharing some things with you. Over to you, Caroline.
Great, thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us. It's really great to see all your names and faces. So I'm just going to give a quick overview or intro to this work. This is the objective of this lighter CS, or of this session that we're doing right now, is to share with you all what we've been doing with the lighter CS initiative, and have an opportunity for you all to give us some feedback on how these tools could be used, promoted, developed, improved over time. We're going to spend just a quick, do a quick introductions, an exercise in a Miro board, and then we'll do an overview of the lighter CS initiative, and that's going to also, we'll go right into the tools themselves and do a little bit of a tour. And then hopefully we'll have about 20 to 25 minutes to break into groups and get some input from you all, and then some next steps. So this is our team here, and we've been involved in the technical content, and it's been great also to have Will as part of that team, providing a lot of insights and strategic direction. And we also see this team as much broader. It includes members of CMP and CCNet, the conservation standards community. We did a lot of consultations as we've been going along and got some really great feedback from you all. So it's really a pretty broad team. Okay, I am going to go into the introductions part, and I'm going to go over to the Miro board. If somebody could drop the link in there, if you haven't already. Just a couple of things. I don't want to assume everybody has worked in Miro, but I know you're getting more and more familiar with these online platforms. I want to just note that there's, it may look like this for you. Down here in the bottom left, there's a way to open the sidebar and go into, there are different pages that you can be on. So we want to be in the introduction overview, and the link probably took you right there. Just a quick note that this has our agenda. It has links to the products, and it also has a link to the presentation that you'll be seeing. But where I'd like you to really focus right now is, if you can zoom in, you can scroll with your mouse, the wheel on your mouse, or you can use your touchpad to zoom in and tell us where you are. This is a little slightly different orientation than we typically see of the world. So what I'd like you all to do is grab a sticky from up here and drag it. You can zoom in, drag it to where you are. So I'll just grab one and I'll put, this is hard to figure out. It's a little bit of a mind game too, but I am in New York State. So here I go, and just put your name and where you are. This is just an opportunity for you guys to get a little practice with Miro, which is what we're going to be using in our breakout groups. And scrolling out a little bit here, it looks like we've got lots of people from US and North America. Got some people joining us from the UK. Zoom a little further out. Is anyone disoriented with the map? Let's see. We've got South Africa here. So it's great. I'm gonna let you guys keep on playing in here if you wish and entering. We've got Mexico, fantastic seeing the diversity of areas that we have represented here. We don't have a lot of people from Asia because this isn't a great time for Asia, but we are doing this session again, what would be evening for us, and we'll be able to add more people to this map. So with that, I am going to turn it over to, I believe, Vinaya. And Vinaya, do you want to share your screen or do you want me to keep on going?
Actually, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, Caroline,
Okay.
that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, yep.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the Lighter CS initiative and an overview of the products we've developed so far. So first off, I want to just point to all of the community input we've gotten to date from the conservation standards community. This has been a truly collaborative process, the development of these Lighter CS tools. Starting with a survey that we administered in September of last year, we heard back from 57 respondents. We analyzed and shared the results of that survey with a series of community consultation sessions, and we had 23 participants in those sessions. And during those consultations, we got a good sense of which Lighter CS tools the community would find most useful and would benefit from. So we were able to sort of prioritize what we as a group invested in developing. We also got a lot of great materials and resources that people pointed us to, lots of examples, tips and insights that we were able to review and use to really shape the content of the tool. We also had a lot of one-on-one meetings, and we used the CCNet listserv and other ways to get access to materials and experiences from others in the community. We took that input, that feedback on board. We developed some prototypes of our products, and we shared those prototypes through the CCNet rally sessions that were held in November. We had 2 sessions so that we could accommodate multiple time zones, kind of like we're doing with this webinar. And we got 84 participants in both of those sessions together, and we got some great insights, reactions, and feedback to those prototypes we had developed. We took that feedback on board, and we've come up with a more refined, updated, but still working drafts of the Lighter CS tools that we're going to be sharing with you all in this webinar. So it's been a consultative process to date. We've really gained a lot from that consultative process, so it's something that we plan to do in later phases of this work as well. Great, next slide, yep. So with the Lighter CS tool that we have developed, and I'll give you an overview of what those tools look like here in just a second. But with those tools, we were aiming for a quicker and easier approach to the conservation standards that would help a conservation project team. Perhaps not necessarily a conservation coach specifically, but the team that would be using a lighter approach to the conservation standards. And we wanted to have an approach that is simple. So we kept the conservation standards steps and sub-steps as sort of an organizing unit, so people can navigate within the tool pretty easily. They'll recognize the steps and sub-steps. And within each of those steps and sub-steps, we've tried to offer simpler tools and processes that could be used for a lighter approach. We've also tried to maintain flexibility, so really being clear that the tools that we share and present as part of Lighter CS can be modified to meet different needs or different audiences. And we explain specifically which tools can be used under different circumstances, recognizing that they're not all one size fits all. Lighter CS focuses on principles, so we emphasize basic principles rather than tools. For example, in the assess phase of the assess step of the conservation standards, we really focus on getting teams to understand the situation rather than specifically to use a situation model tool. And we also try to clarify what is sort of must have versus recommended, or possibly even what's optional or not necessary for different scenarios. Next slide. Great. So what is our lighter CS product? Right now we're using shorthand, we're calling it a cookbook. And with this cookbook, we are using a scenario-based structure. So what we've done with all the input we received from our consultations and general feedback from the CS community, we identified a series of scenarios that conservation teams often find themselves in, where they might be looking to a lighter approach to using the conservation standards. And that's what you see here in the gray boxes laid out on the slides. So one scenario may be that a team really wants to go full cycle, but for whatever reason, they're not able to go in depth in all of the steps in the cycle. So they really need a full cycle basics approach to the conservation standards. And you can see there are, I think, 9 scenarios in total, ranging from teams needing to identify the best indicators for their conservation targets. Maybe a team needs to develop a monitoring plan for a strategy that they're already implementing. All of these different scenarios where a project team, again, may want to use a lighter approach to using the open standards, conservation standards, excuse me. For each of these scenarios, we have, we're really building on a cookbook analogy. So imagining that each scenario is a dish that a conservation team wants to prepare. For each dish, we have a recipe card that includes a description of what the dish is, directions for how to cook it, and the basic ingredients, what you need to prepare the dish. So in this example here with the full cycle basics, this recipe card includes all of those components, and the ingredients in that recipe card, what's listed on the right, are the different substeps of the conservation standards that are relevant to that specific scenario. And taking it a step further, you can see for each of those ingredients, we've developed tip sheets that go into a little bit more detail about that specific ingredient or that specific substep, where you walk through the basics of that substep, offer some different approaches for how to take a lighter approach for that substep, and also some general tips around that particular substep. So that was just a quick summary of a quick overview of those different components of our cookbook. I'll just quickly show you here a screenshot of this spreadsheet that we've developed to help us build out those recipe cards for the different scenarios. This is just a screenshot of part of that spreadsheet where you can see the row headers are the different steps and substeps of the conservation standards. The column headers are those different scenarios. And we've noted in green which substeps are relevant for the different scenarios, and in yellow which substeps are potentially relevant for certain scenarios. So basically this helps a team kind of in a quick snapshot see that not all substeps are relevant for each of the scenarios. And in some cases, certain steps may not be as useful or even relevant, depending on what scenario a team find themselves in. That's just a quick overview. I'll pass it over to Ash Baker, who's going to give us a tour a little bit more in depth of what the cookbook actually looks like.
Great, thanks, Benaya. And Caroline, I can share my screen. Perfect. Thank you. Read my mind. Great. So I'm just going to share this, hopefully. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to start us off just on the first page of the cookbook. This is how you know you're in the right place. This is where the cookbook starts. We've gone over kind of the general plan for the cookbook and how you move around it, but I just want to bring you to slide 5. It's set up in a PowerPoint format right now. We'll see where that goes in the future. This is the first draft, but for now, kind of imagine you're working through a hybrid of a PowerPoint and a website here. So everything is clickable on these slides. Right now we're looking at the table of contents, and this is kind of the home page for the website on this document. So you'll get your introduction and framing, detailed instructions for how to use this cookbook by clicking these links here. Then you'll actually get this full set of recipes or scenarios that Vinaya was just highlighting. If you click any of these boxes here, it'll take you to that recipe. We also pulled out all of the tip sheets separately in case you want to enter this tool in a different way. Maybe you know exactly what you're looking for and you're not as interested in the scenarios portion, but you want a tip sheet on how to do scope and targets in a lighter way. So we just wanted to make sure that you were able to approach this information in whichever way was most useful for you. So do remember this homepage is kind of your main resource. I encourage you to kind of read through this and cover some of the framing that Vinaya just shared with us there about how we intend this tool to be used, what the purpose is, how you use it. But I'm going to take us kind of quickly through it. So I'm going to skip over a lot of that framing and just focus on how to use the book itself. You might choose to download this as a PDF, for example. That might be one way that you choose to use this. You might just bookmark this as a tool in your browser to come back to at another time. And then once you get in here and you start figuring out how exactly you want to use it for your project, I wanted to orient you to the specific parts, the components of the workbook itself, or this cookbook, I guess is what we're calling it. So I'm going to go through slide 15 and 16 basically in the slides themselves. So you're going to get kind of a walkthrough of what this might look like. I'm going to move us down to our first recipe card here, which is full cycle basics. Vinaya just showed that to us on the screen as well. And I just want to orient you to some of the components of what the recipe card entails. So we have our recipe for covering the full cycle basics. We have the general scenario that you might use this under. So this is kind of the conditions under which you would use this card. And in this case, we're saying maybe your project team just wants to apply the full conservation standards, but you have limited time to go through all the steps. So this is the time to use this recipe. That's your scenario. And then you have your full set of ingredients on the right here. So what are the things you need to put into this recipe to make it work? And you can go to any one of these boxes. They're clickable links directly to the tip sheet as well. And so with those ingredients in mind, you come down to the directions and we tell you how to bake or cook your meal, right? So we tell you basically at a minimum what the team should do to address each of these points. And I'll just draw your attention to the one with the asterisks and italics here. That is linking to the operational plan over here on the right. And if you see that on one of the cards, that means that under certain conditions, you might use this ingredient, but you might not have to use the ingredient as well. So in this case, the folks who developed this said that if the risk appears high, then you probably want to consider creating an operational plan. But if the risk is not high, then you might be able to leave that out of your lighter approach. So that's kind of the gist of the scenario cards themselves. And I'll just note that anywhere you are in this cookbook, there's a little home icon on most of the slides. And if you click that at any time, it'll take you back to that table of contents that we started on. So if you ever want to go back to the beginning, you can just click that. Okay, so let's hop into an ingredient tip sheet. So if you click, and let me just give you a tip because the way this is set up, it's a little bit easier if you click on the kind of on the outside of the box, just to the side, it'll take you right to the slides that you would like to go to. So we're going to start talking about the scope and targets tip sheets here. Each tip sheet will start with a high-level basic slide, which will give you an overview of generally what you want to cover for scope and targets when you're using a lighter approach. So this is kind of the overall entry slide to this ingredient here. But we also have highlighted 3 different potential options for a lighter approach, recognizing that you might choose to do something slightly different depending on your context and what information you have available. So this is a good slide just to kind of briefly take a look at, decide which of these lighter approaches or maybe which combination of these lighter approaches you'd like to explore. But keep in mind that there's this set of general tips that are relevant to all of those lighter approaches. So we encourage you to read through this before you go into the details of the specific lighter approach options. And I'll also draw your attention briefly down in the bottom right to this Examples and Resources tab. You can click this in the same way, and it will open a new pane for you here, directly linked to your resources and examples for this. This is still very much in draft format, so this is not going to be useful for you yet, but I just want to let you know that we are working on creating kind of a set of examples and resources that you might be able to draw from that would be helpful for you in creating this. And maybe you find yourself in a position later down the road that you can invest a little bit more time and you can turn that lighter approach into a more robust approach. And those examples and resources will continue to support you through that process. Okay, so now let's go to the next level down here, which is the specific tip sheet for the specific lighter approach. And again, these are all clickable boxes, so that's going to take me to the next slide here. Consult with key people. Oops, sorry, I'm jumping around. So on these slides, we have a couple new things here. On the top right, you see this when to use and what you lose box. And this is just to kind of help you decide which lighter approach is right for you. So in this case, on the when to use side, we suggest that you consult with key people, which is what this lighter approach is, when you know that there are key people knowledgeable enough to define the scope and targets, and you know that the team or the stakeholders will appreciate a draft for reaction and will provide feedback. But you might lose some things as well with this lighter approach. So it might constrain your thinking a little bit because you're only using a few key people and other stakeholders or team members might not feel as engaged. So we just have these as considerations for you to think through as you're deciding which approach works for you. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it if you find something on this list that you're worried about using. Maybe you pull in another lighter approach to help complement or fill in the gaps there as time and resources permit. So once you've decided that this is probably the approach you want to take, just consult with key people. We give you a how-to here, so you can see 4 steps here, just kind of taking you through the process of what you might do and some additional tips for creating this lighter approach. Again, eventually in the bottom right, we'll have this linking to examples and resources as the community shares them with us, but this is where they're at for right now. This was just kind of one brief example for these tip sheets, but I will say we have developed many of them out. If you go to our table of contents here, you can click through and explore some of these other tip sheets as well to see if any of them might be relevant or interesting to you. You might find when you get to a tip sheet, and I'll go to one to show you, you might find that it's still under construction. You'll see this little under construction image, and those slides will then be hidden below, but just know that we're working on those and we're hoping to pull those in over the next year so that we have a more robust set of lighter approaches. Okay.
Just a time check.
Yep.
Great. So I'm going to keep us going with the next part. And I know you guys have been talked at a lot, but we're going to actually have 20 to 25 minutes to do a breakout session where you'll be able to provide direct feedback. So right now I'm going to orient you to that. If we go back to the Miro board, and I'm going to click on one of these feedback spaces. So we're going to get away from the map area and go into the feedback. Oh, it looks like somebody already found this. Great. Well, you may not be in group 1, but that's okay. We don't really care where the feedback goes as long as we get it. There are different boards for the different groups. So this 1-1 is for group 1. We're in session 1, group 2, session 1, group 3. And Sarah will assign you to sessions or to breakout groups, and we'll spend 20 to 25 minutes. And we have different panes here where we can get your overall reactions. We can also get your input on specific sections like the introduction, framing, the how to use, the recipe cards and the scenarios chart and the tip sheets. And then finally, we have a moving forward. I would encourage, you're not going to have a ton of time but your facilitators will move you along. I would love, I think our group would love ideas for how to best promote and share this. So if you could make sure that you do fill in this area of the moving forward. And then also just to note, if you see something you like or you agree with or disagree with, feel free to grab some thumbs up or thumbs down and put them in there. So I think anyone from our group, anything else I should mention about the breakout session? Okay, then I think let's go ahead and break into groups and we'll get to hear from you all now.
We're good.
Okay.
Carolyn,
Yeah.
can you set your screen, please?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yep,
Okay, so everybody's coming back.
yep. Okay. Sorry, I need to find my Zumba. Just, you can go ahead, Armando, and I will do that.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back. Before we release you into the wild again, we wanted to talk a little bit about the next steps. And what we're going to be talking about is several things. First, and thank you for the questions during the breakout groups. We will leave this mural board and these frames open for another week. So until next Friday, which I don't know what date it is, but somebody will probably tell me. But it's next Friday. So if you have further comments and you have further thoughts on what we're missing and so on, please, that would be very, very helpful. It has, all your comments have been really, really helpful up to now. So this is great. The next thing is, if you can go one, there they go. Oh, thank you, Vinaya. February 18th, it will be open. The next is, as you have seen and Vinaya was telling you, we've gone through the scope in the product development, and we're right now in the guidance review at this moment. And what we will be doing now is consult with reviewers. We will be considering feedback from these webinars, and we will be trying to finalize the products. And as Ashley mentioned, this is an ongoing thing, so we will be working on it over this year. One important thing, and we want to highlight, is that the best recipe still is the conservation standards in its full cycle. However, we know that this is not always the case, and you have to be a little bit flexible of what you can use and what you cannot use. And that's why we created this cookbook. And I hope that it is helpful. Now that you know everything that we've been doing and everything that it includes, if you want to be a content reviewer, there is up there a sign up for content review. If somebody could put up that link, it leads you to the same mural board, but a different frame. Please put in your name and your email and we'll contact you, and you will be in our grasp for the next year, and you will not be able to to escape. But apart from that, I just want to thank everybody for being part of this webinar and being part of this moment. All your information, all your input has been great. And as you know, we are doing this for the whole conservation standards community. So if you have further comments or any other ideas, please let us know. I don't know, Caroline, if you want to add something.
Yep, just to thank you. Really appreciate everybody being here.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.